Hello everyone and welcome to another Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Allison with the blog A Glimpse Inside, and today I have another cute little beach scene to kind of go along with what we did last week. I used a different little girl, and this time I added a little shed kind of hut to the painting. This one is on a 5x7 piece of watercolor paper, so it's a lot bigger than what we worked with last time. You could definitely scale it down. Everything would just then be closer together, or you don't have to add this tree or something over here. So just work with what you have and make it your own. But to do this painting, we do actually have quite a few stamps and markers. Again, I was trying to keep the markers down, but then kind of in the end, it turned to quite a few. So, but we will need, let me start with the stamps. We're going to do the little girl set again of the Art Impression watercolor stamp. So the little girl beach set. And this time we're using this little one right here with the shovel. And then in the new flower set 4, we are going to use this long one, but we're actually only going to use the bloom of it. In the garden shed set, we are going to use this front facing one. In the palm tree set, we're going to use the tall palm tree. Again, you can use the shorter one too, actually. We're going to use this one, the 2 biggest palms. And then I am using this curved one and this curved one as well for the bushes. So we'll use quite a few of those this time. In the mini flower set, the little tiny little mini dots. And then in the foliage set 4, one or both, whichever one of these little wispy grasses you want to use. I have out, let's see, this one. Have to check my stamp. So you can use either one of those. And then as far as the markers, again, bear with me. I use the Marvula Plume 2s again. I have number 17 Still Blue, number 55 Iris Purple, number 101 Tropical, number 36 Magnesium Blue, number 18 Dark Brown, number 88 Terracotta, number 86 African Violet, number 30 Rosewood, number 7 Orange, number 16 Pale Orange, number 45 Sepia, and can we get them all on here? Number 15 Olive Green. So again, quite a few markers. And then, use what you have. You don't have to use so many of them. So we will also, for this one, use Post-it tape if you have it. Otherwise, a regular Post-it note will work. And yeah, just your brush, a palette, and some water. Okay, so let's get started. We are going to start with our big old shed. And we're just going to ink this up first with number 45 Sepia. So there's lots of little lines on this one. So we just kind of, to make sure you go in different directions and get them all here. Again, use the side of your brush when you ink up your stamps, not the tip, because that will just take you forever. Okay, so we're all inked up. I'm going to put the shed over here on the right side of my paper. And, just probably a little about center. I want to leave plenty of room for the palm trees above it, and then the bush next to it. So there is our little shed hut, beach hut, I guess, since it's in this case, we'll call it a beach hut. So now we have to drag the water out of the lines. So these lines, let's see if I can get closer here, are so tiny. So you have to be really careful on how you drag the color and make sure your brush is not really wet. So I'm going to start kind of here where those will be darkest, like under those beams, and then come under this beam here. Those actually have like an underside on them. And then I'm going to drag some of this color down at the top here. And then right where like the roof and that beam meet, I'll be flipping my paper here, right where the roof and that beam meet, and then under here. And then here's the door. So I'm going to go kind of right where the building meets the little deck here. I'm going to do those lines or under the door. I'm going to go like kind of above the door. So I kind of want to give like there's a little shadow from, you know, that molding. Kind of the same thing over here. And then we will do the same. There is a little line on this side here where it kind of goes in. Okay, so then our porch, we have our like little step down here. Drag this color. And then under our window here. And then these little crack lines, like if you kind of want to just go over them, you can, you know, add a little shadowing next to those. And then over here next to the window. Okay, so now for like the beams and the columns, these like vertical stripes, and then even the molding around the door, and then these lines on the door, I am just going to use sepia to paint those in. So I'm just going to put a little bit of sepia on my palette, and I'm not going to get a ton of my brush. Like I kind of just almost want it to look like I just dragged the colors a little more out of the lines. So I'm just going to add a little bit of color, just kind of almost like a wash over those. You can make it darker in, you know, some areas, but I really just want to keep it super light. And kind of nondescript. This one under here can be darker because we'll say like the little roof is, you know, covering it up a little more. Okay, and then I'm going to add a little bit onto what would be like the top part of the deck here. Okay, so right in these little gaps, it's kind of like where you see the underside of the roof and here. And then these two are like the building. So I'm just going to add some sepia into those areas, and then we'll come back to that. So be real careful because those are super small, that you don't bleed out your lines a little too much. But, okay. Add a little bit to here. And then our window. Okay. So for the body of my shed, I'm going to do the 36 magnesium blue. And then the door, I'm going to do 101 tropical. And then for the roof, I'm going to mix number 86 African Violet with my sepia. So we will start with the roof, and I'm going to mix these two up here to make that gray, browny gray color. And then I'm just going to, make it look almost like a tin roof here. I'm not going to paint that whole thing in. I'm going to leave white areas and leave it just like that. And then I'm going to come in with the same color under these little spots to darken those up. And then I will just repeat over the roof to get that color darker in some spots. I'm fine if it's lighter in others and whatever. So again, I'm going to add more to that to darken, and we're going to leave that for now. I'm going to actually kind of touch that little crack of the roof a little bit there. Okay, so now for the blue, for the base of the house, I'm just going to go straight in here with this color and just kind of brush it in. I'm being careful not to get too close to those brown sepia lines because I don't want to drag that and dirty up my blue too much, but it's okay if you get a little bit, especially up near the tops here, where it would be a little darker, shadow-wise. So I start at the top when I'm painting, and then I work the color down so it's lighter near the base of the house. So it would be darker, where there would be kind of more of like a shadow up at the top from the roof and stuff. And then lighter down near the bottom. So I'm just going to come back over because the front of the house here under the deck or under the roof would be darker. So this is actually all up until this line right here is the whole front. This little section is only the side. So you can, at the top here, let me get more of this on my palette. So you can come, down this side and at the top here. And then as it gets closer to that line, I would make it lighter, since that will be where, the sun may hit it more. So, all right. So I'm going to leave that to dry for a minute, and then we will come back to that in a few. All right, so now we'll come to our door. And again, the door I painted 101 Tropical. So kind of the same thing. We're just going to lightly paint around. And make sure not to get too much into those lines. And if you look real close, this door actually comes on the other side of this pole. If you need to, you can switch to a much smaller brush, or you can just be none the wiser and paint that like it's maybe just molding around the door. So for this one, I'm going to make it darker kind of on this side and then lighten it as it goes towards the doorknob. So I'm just going to, and then make it darker here on the top. And then as dark as I can get it on the sides here, like behind that column, without bleeding too much into that column. Okay, so I'm going to leave that door for now like that. So now I'm going to come back, since this is kind of dried a little bit, and I'm going to take some African Violet and mix some of that in with my magnesium blue, and then kind of brush it in to these areas that would be darkest to create more of a shadow with the color. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. Just darkening up that color a little bit. And then I'm going to add a little bit here under the window, I think. And there. So that way now you have more depth going on with that. And I'm going to come in here actually with just African Violet and darken up this underside right here one more time. And actually that was supposed to get some blue in it. Okay. So we're almost done with our shed here. So before I move on, I'm going to take the thin side of my sepia and I'm going to come over this little handle here and just draw over it. And then I'm just going to kind of come back over any of these lines that would be darker. So right here, like kind of where that door jamb is, like where it's recessed along the top of the door. Maybe down that side. I'm going to darken that and I'm going to kind of make that crack go up a little bit. Same over here. I'm going to darken under our roof. Turn that a little bit here. Darken under these little beams. So when you do this, it actually helps and makes those little details kind of pop off the page a little more again, especially after you added that paint to it, or maybe your lines just didn't stamp very well, you know, whatever you okay. And then I realized I didn't paint the window. Okay, so for the window, we're just going African Violet into the little window panes here. So I'm just kind of paint it in, leaving the sides. I'll let that dry for just a second. I'm going to come in with a little bit drier of a brush and then just kind of darken it. And there we go. Okay, so our shed is done. And now I'm going to place our little girl in. So I'm going to ink her up, same thing, just sepia this time. And then I want her kind of like she's playing in the sand, like in front, but on the lower area of this painting. So I'm just going to kind of tuck her right here. And there you have her. So same thing. We don't need to pull a lot of color out of her lines because we're just going to be painting her in. But I'm going to kind of pull out her backside here. And I'm going to pull out where her bathing suit and her leg meet. And then like under this arm. Because that will help when we paint her in. She'll have a little bit of a shadow in these areas. And then a little bit down right there. And then kind of underneath her hair, down her neck. I'm just going to pull a little bit out. And then I'm going to drag some of this color just right under her to create, excuse me, a little shadow like under her. Let me move her up a little bit here so you can see her better. Okay, so then I'm going to start with her bathing suit, and her bathing suit's going to be this iris purple. Super kind of simple. We're just going to paint it in. I'm going to have it darker on this side and kind of fade out as we get to this other side of her. So I'm going to have the darkest color over here, and then as it gets to this side, I'm just going to stop painting and kind of release the paintbrush from the paper. And then come down her straps. So again, the more layers of paint, the darker your color will be. So I kind of just feather it, and then each time I feather, I just stop how far over I'm going. And that way then, you see the real values of the paint. I'm trying to get it pretty dark right here, and then under her. Okay, so that is her suit, super simple. We're going to move on to her hair, and her hair is just going to be dark brown, and then I'm going to mix a little bit of sepia in it. I just kept it real simple. You can customize this to whatever hair color you want. I'm going to kind of go with the swish of the hair here to like bring that color out, and then I'm going darker here and then lighter as I go to the top of her head. So I'm just going to keep layering till I get like a color that I'm happy with here. I'm going to take a little sepia. Just kind of add a little sepia in. Feather that out a little bit. Okay. So, okay, I'm going to leave her like that for now, I think. And then last on her, which I guess not fully last, but we're going to do the pale orange again for her skin tone. Feel free to use any other color. You can do the sepia for the skin, for a darker complexion. So with this, it starts super light, where it's almost barely noticeable, but you're like, I am painting, right? And then it will go darker with each layer of paint. So for her arm here, I'm going to make it really dark on the bottom side for like a shadow, and then I'm not going to paint up to her up on the like top side of her arm. I'm just going to leave that white. So here's a second layer, so she's gotten a little darker here. Okay, so again, I'm going to take just a tiny bit, like super tiny bit of sepia, and I'm going to come in and just kind of darken a few areas up where she would have a shadow, where her arm is casting a shadow, where her leg kind of may have a shadow, and then kind of behind her neck here. And if you do too much, if you're like, oh no, now she just turned like a totally different color, just go right back over it with your pale orange, and it will blend in and make that turn more of the orange color, the peach color, if you accidentally do too much. So, okay, so now that she is done, I'm going to leave her shovel for now, and then we are going to move on to the pine trees, or I keep calling them pine trees, palm trees. Goodness. So I have my tall palm tree trunk, and same thing, just sepia, and ink that up. And actually, before I do, we need to mask our hut here. So I'm just using Post-it tape, And I am just going to go right over the lines here with my Post-it tape. You can see I used this, last time to do my sample here. So I'm just going right over and just masking, and then I'm going to press, I'm going to press all this down. One little stray piece that came from somewhere. Okay, so now I'm going to put 2 palm trees coming out from behind this hat. So I'm going to have one kind of coming out this way. So I'm just going to turn my stamp and press it out that way. And then I'm going to re-ink just kind of the top portion, and then have it coming, let's see, let me wipe off some of this. It may go a little far. Okay. And then have one just kind of come straight up from behind. So there we go. And then I'm going to ink it one more time all the way. And have one over on this side. So this palm tree kind of leans. So if you want it leaning in a certain direction, you just kind of have to turn your stamp, because it kind of curves towards the left. So, okay. So there are our 3 palm tree trunks. I'm going to remove those, but don't keep those handy. We will use those again. So let's pop this in some water, and we're not going to drag a lot of color out of these lines because we don't need to. There's a lot of detail. A little color drag goes a long way on these. And then we will just add a tiny bit of dark brown to it, and our trunks will be done. Okay, so I have dark brown on my palette already, so I'm just going to touch the dark brown. I'm not even really painting it. I'm literally just like touching my brush into the sections. And wherever the paint goes, the paint goes. I'm trying to leave, the values of the white and then the sepia. So that's all we're going to do there. Okay, so for our actual branches, I'm using the 2 big palm leaves. So this one will stamp towards the right, and I'm going to start with this one, and I'm just going to use the olive green number 15. So I'll start on this one here, and I'm going to kind of start it with facing down and then come up a little bit. And then this last one will come upright. So I'm not going to switch stamps yet. I'm just going to keep going to all of my trees. So again, down, kind of outwards. I tend to do about 6 leaves per tree. But if you accidentally stamp one, and you're like, and then the next one, and you're like, ooh, that's a big gap, and you didn't mean to have like a big gap, or you have like a weird space up top, feel free just to add more. I ended up adding on my sample, this one I got all messed up, so if you can see, I have all sorts of leaves going in every direction on that one. Okay, so let's move that off, and we're going to switch to this leaf that now goes towards the left side. Ink that up, and same thing, I'm going to start with one going all the way down, kind of straight out, and then up. And then again, down, straight out. So I do the first 2 twice, and then I re-ink for my last leaf. So straight down. over and straight up. All right, so there are our palm trees. And then we're just gonna dip our brush in water, pinch it off, and dab to soften that. Drag the color out from the leaves a little bit, kind of extend them. Try to leave that white space, a little bit there to give that watercolor effect. The more water you add, the, more watercolor effect you'll get, the less detail you'll have. If that's what you like, go for it. There are times I'll try to add more water. There are times I don't add a lot at all. Kind of depends on my mood, and even if it's an accident, oops, I got too much water that time. With the palm trees, though, I try to do as little water because I do like the texture of the trees. Oops, see, I just had way too much water on that accidentally. Didn't pull enough off, but that's okay. All right, so those are done. So now we are going to switch over to our smaller little palm leaves and add our bushes. So I'm just going to start, this is the one that goes towards the left. So for this, I'm going to start on this side. So I'm going to cover up that pillar because I don't want, I'm going to try to like have it where it splits the pillar here. So same olive green, and then I'm just going to keep kind of just make it a big full plant. You can make it as wide as you want. You can bring it out however much. So there's that section. So now it comes out. So I'm going to move this piece onto that side of the house to cover the house. And then I'm going to take a separate piece here and cover up the pillar here, as well as the bottom of the deck here. And then, oh, I was supposed to switch stamps. Hold on, time out. Okay, so now I have the stamp that goes towards the right. So now I'm just going to add this in here. You can do a full thing where it just looks like it's tucked behind. You can do smaller little branches, however you want to do that. So now it looks like, that tree is just right next to the shed. And then I'm going to cover up this side of the shed, and we're kind of do the same thing coming out from this side with the stamp that's left on your. Again, you can make it, this super big bush. You can make it not so crazy, just a little couple small ones, however you want. And then there we go. Those are done. So now we'll come back and add some water to those. We're getting to the end here, guys. This is kind of is a longer one here. Longer project. Okay, same thing like our palm trees. Dip your brush in water, pinch it off, and dab over those. Okay, so I'm gonna let those dry for a minute or two. And we are going to come in and start our grass, or I'm sorry, our sand here. So for the sand, not that color, I'm gonna do rosewood. Ooh, excuse me, I just yawned. And I'm just gonna scribble away here. And then I'm actually gonna do a little more of my pale orange. And scribble away. And then I'm gonna add some more sepia to my palette up there. So, last time I did it, I did just the pale orange. I'm sorry, just the rosewood for the sand. This time I'm going to kind of mix, if you can see, I'm going to mix the pale orange and rosewood together. And then I'm going to come and I'm going to start in front of the little shed here. And I'm going to actually have my brush pretty wet so I can just kind of pull this color around. And then I'm not going to go, in my sample, I went all the way down here and made it like a full, I'm going to do something a little different for this picture. So I'm just going to do the sand right there. I'm not going to come down any farther. I'm going to come up here and figure out where I want my, kind of my beach line to go. Because this is an ocean and I do need a like somewhat little line. I am going to put a little bit of sand next to that bush though. Okay, so, and then I'm going to come down and kind of paint here around my tree. And I will come up here where my line and the ocean is. And I'm just going to kind of tee into that area. And then I'm going to come under her, kind of come behind her a little bit here. It's so hard to see. Can you see that? So then I just came around and kind of here. So this is kind of still white and all this is white. It's so hard to see with this color. So we're not fully painting all of that in. While that dries, we'll use our 101 Tropical that we used on our door. And this is going to be our water. So the water, you know, I will go all the way across with. I'll do a little peak of water on that side of the house. Need a little more here. Okay, so there's our slight little bit of ocean. And then our normal number 17 Still Blue is going to be the sky. So for the sky, I'm just going to kind of go right here over the palm trees and then kind of around this palm tree. So I'm just going to kind of like loosely, kind of almost like how I did the sand. I'm not, you know, going to do every inch of this painting this time, how I did that little one last week. So we're just gonna come in here and carefully tuck our sky in and around our palm trees. I almost said pine trees again. Why do I keep calling these pine trees? I don't know. We're going to just kind of tuck those in. Come up and around. Okay, so there's those. And now I'm going to come start on this side with this one here. This is practically all painted in. My trees are closer together than they were in my sample one, I think. But that's okay. And then I'm just going to kind of connect right above the water there. All right, so there's that. So now that my green bushes are dry, I'm going to come back with these little tiny flowers and the same color we use on her bathing suit, which is the iris purple. And I'm just going to ink up some of these and make sure that's on there good. And then we're just going to add like a little bit of flowers into this plant. It's just to add like a little pop of color. It doesn't have to be a lot. You know, just to kind of add a little something to these plants over here. So same thing over here. I don't even like fully stamp. I just kind of like, or fully color. I just kind of like pick a spot and just rub, and then just press it. So here I'm just gonna add a little bit of water, just kind of make that color pop a little more. And there we have that. Okay, so now we're going to come back down here and let me put a little bit more rosewood on my palette here. So I'm going to take some sepia and add it in with my rosewood here. And I'm going to kind of come through, end up being a little darker. But I'm going to come through and kind of add some shadows. Like, you know, maybe there's a shadow right here in front of the little shed. Something on this side. Extend her little shadow under her. I'll put a little bit in front of here. Let me try to see if I can fade this out a little bit. That got to be a little darker than I would have liked it to be. Okay. And kind of just around her, we'll add more of a shadow. And then if you want to kind of, you know, create little dunes, you can just add a little bit more color elsewhere. Okay. So, ooh, we have 2 more stamps. Almost done, guys. Almost done. So I'm going to start first with the grass, and the grasses I'm actually only going to do in sepia. So, and I'm going to just put some grasses kind of right here around the palm tree. And then I'm going to take off some of this here. And just ink the top, and then I'm just kind of add a little bit like right in front of the porch, and then kind of along the side here, just a little bit, like, you know, those beach grasses growing. You can always add a little more. Okay. So quickly with that, dip your brush in water, and then like all grasses, just brush up and out, and that will just kind of make it the way of the grass there. All right, for her little shovel, you can always put sand, paint it with like sand on it. I think this time I'm just gonna use sepia there. And I'm just gonna paint, not sepia, I'm sorry, African violet, and just paint that in African violet. Okay, last thing, I promise, is this little flower is in the new flower set. And if you look at that part, I feel like it's like the perfect shell. So I'm going to use terracotta and just inking up the top, like actual flower part of the stamp, and make that like a fun little shell on the beach. So I'm gonna put one in front of her, I'll put one over here behind her, and then I'm gonna wipe that color off, and I'm gonna do it again with just orange. So same thing, we'll put this one kind of over here, and then this time I'm not gonna ink the whole thing. I am just, let's see, I'm gonna ink like half of this to almost make it look like a broken shell, and then just kind of tuck it right there. So I'm going to dip my brush in water, and then I'm going to brush from the tip down to kind of soften those. I'm even just going to kind of mix them here. And then I'm going to take the thin side of my sepia, and I'm going to outline that to kind of make it look more stamp-like, I guess. You don't even have to like fully do the whole thing. And then you could always even go back and kind of soften that a little bit. And actually, I'm going to add some little detail lines here. Okay, let's see. Is that it? Did we use everything? I've lost track. And there is your cute little beach scene. I am going to, let's see, I'm going to use a sepia and sign and date it. And there you go. So sorry that painting was a lot longer than I think I thought it was going to take on a video, but I hope you enjoy it. I hope you try it. I mean, you could always just make the shed, because look how cute that would be as a painting. Even just her with the palm tree and the little shells is super cute. So many different things you can do. Again, you can try this on a little smaller, and everything would just come in a little bit more. I hope you like it. I hope you try it out. If you have any suggestions for me that you would like me to create, let me know in the comments, or shoot me an email or on social media, and I will see what I can do. I hope everyone is doing fantastic, and I will see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.